Asgorath, swallower of shades, shine in the face of your servant, for he worships you in the morning. He propitiates you in the evening. I breathe the air, the north wind which comes from you. Be content, Lord of the gods, for you are exalted in the firmament, and your rays over my breast are like the day. Invocation of Persepharial, great gold worm. Ah, now there's a bit of history you won't find neatly tucked between the pages of some temple scribe's polished chronicle. Most priests leave this part out because it makes their precious gods look, well, let us say, less than flawless, shall we? So, picture this. The Batrachi, amphibious folk, clever as a cabal of wizards and twice as smug, were having an absolutely rotten time of it. Their cities, all fine domes and winding canals, were being stomped flat by the titan brood of Annam. Imagine fighting something the size of a hill that throws boulders the size of a house, and you'll understand why the Batrachi were losing. In their desperation, they did what desperate folk always do, something stupid and far too big for their own good. They cast a ritual so vast, it rattled the bones of Toril itself, tearing open old, divine locks and letting loose the primordials, being so old and so raw with power that even the gods don't much like being in the same room with them. And then, oh my, the mess. The gods descended like a flock of very angry eagles, and the whole world went mad. Earthquakes that split mountains, storms that scoured coasts, and fires that turned forests into drifting ash. It was during all this chaos that she appeared, Asgorath, the world shaper. Now, you'd think with a name like that, she'd be a builder, wouldn't you? Ha, no. She took one look at Toril, decided she couldn't have it, and so resolved to smash it into so much cosmic gravel. Her method? Oh, just casually hurling an ice moon at the planet. Yes, an entire moon. As you do. It would have worked too, had not Lord A.O., the Hidden One himself, stepped in. And A.O. does not step in lightly, mind you. With one act of impossible will, he split the very reality in two. A bear for the primordials, Toril for the gods, neat and tidy, like a butcher in lonely wood cleaving a roast. Now, this great sundering didn't exactly leave the place in pristine condition. In the ages that followed, the elves would sing of the tearfall, and not the happy we weep for joy sort of tears either. This was fire and stone raining from the heavens. Some say it was the debris of Asgorath's shattered ice moon. Others, more fanciful perhaps, but I find it charming, claim those weren't stones at all, but eggs. Yes, eggs. Great, flaming dragon eggs, cracking open across the world to spill forth the first of Dragonkind into the Dawn Ages. Whether born of stone or shell, dragons soon came to rule the skies. By around minus 30,000 DR, dragons had the run of the place. They carved their territories in fang and fire, fought one another over sea, sky, and mountain, and built empires that would make today's kings look like tavern keepers. And oh, how they loved their gods then. Bahamut, Tiamat, and the rest of the Draconic Pantheon were worshipped in sprawling temples atop mountains, altars glittering with more treasure than Waterdeep's vaults could dream of. But faith is a delicate thing. Over centuries, dragons began to ask awkward questions. Why were their divine guardians content to watch them butcher each other by the thousands? Why let holy wars burn entire clutches from the world? Their devotion waned. Except, there's always an except for one war. The Dragonfall War between the followers of Bahamut and the spawn of Tiamat raged on and on, as endless as a gnome's lecture on gear ratios. No philosophy could cool that feud. And so there you have it, how an ice moon nearly ended us, how Lord A.O. invented real estate partitioning, and how dragons rose to strut and squabble their way across Faerun. In the beginning, there was everything, but it was enclosed in the shell of nothingness. There was no one to warm the egg and hatch out all the worlds, just the endless black night, as hard and cold as diamonds. And then, in a moment, something new awoke. There, on the boundary between the inside of the shell and the outside of the yolk, arose the one we call Io. He saw all things waiting to be born and knew that only from nothingness could that happen. So he became the nothingness, grew within it, and spread until he stretched to the ends of the night. And the everything within the egg stretched within him until he became everything as well. He sent himself through every part of what would ever be, and when he was one with it, as well as with nothingness, the blending was accomplished. Everything and nothing were blended in Io, and he began to turn. Slowly at first, and then more quickly, he spun out the sky, the stars, and the worlds. In his spinning, colours appeared along with gleaming streaks of metal, and they separated into two rings. Each ring spun off and became a great worm, Tiamat of the many colours, and Bahamut the metallic lord, and then all the kinds of dragons. Later, other creatures appeared among the worlds, but dragons were the first and most beloved of Io. Yet, a small part of everything and nothing remained within Io, despite all he created. He still spins, but ever more slowly now. When he stops, the nothingness will encase him and form a new egg, holding all the worlds and tomorrows to follow. Though all things are part of Asgorath, he knew that his children would follow their own paths once they had spun from him. Their choices would sometimes clash and lead to conflicts. Io does not take sides in draconic struggles unless they threaten to disturb the balance of the worlds, but he wishes peace to all his children. Thus, as his last act of creation, he spun off droplets of his blended essence as places of refuge from strife and hatred. These droplets became floating heavens, called spheres of concordance, places where dragons can ease their hearts and minds. A sphere of concordance is a place of peace and plenty, where dragons and their kin can relax without restraints, regardless of colour or alignment. All is provided for, and every item of beauty is there. Myriad gems and crystals, ethereal music, shining gold, and warm sunsets. Nowadays, only those who can discern how to seek the spheres can know a given sphere's location. It was not always so, however. In the time after the blending, it happened that Roknar, the dwarf deity of avarice and wealth, discovered a sphere. Ever driven by his own greed, he seized it as his own and fastened it deep within the earth, using chains he had stolen from Moradin's forge. Roknar and his followers then slaughtered the dragons who came there for succor, until the cries of his murdered children finally reached the ears of Io. He or she, depending on your perspective, saw the chains and smelled the blood, and a mighty fury welled up in his heart. He fell upon Roknar with wings that crossed the sky and flames that burned the land. The chains snapped, and he could not release the dwarf god, so he drove him as a ball of fire to the outer reaches of the worlds. He snapped the chains and set the sphere adrift, and then he began to sing. Io sang of fury, and then of peace, of loss, and of restoration, and he mixed the blood of his children with his own tears and the glorious notes. His great song spread through all the worlds and reverberated in every sphere, attuning the spheres to the souls of dragons, so that no other creatures could sully them. Io said to his high priest, "Know Atherthos, the treasure keeper. Only you and those you teach can know the way to the spheres. Keep them safe." This is how the singers of concordance came to be. Only they can still hear the echoes of Io's song. Only they can lead a child of Io to a sphere, and they guard the peace within. The great hall was warm that night, the crackling hearth casting gold light over silver scales, bronze crests, brass claws, copper curls, and the regal burnished whiskers of gold. Every metallic dragon had gathered close, some reclining like coiled rivers of muscle and gleaming hide, others perched with wings folded neatly, eyes fixed on the little old man sitting in the largest chair he could possibly be lost in. Fizban the Fabulous, or at least that was what he'd written on the placard in front of him, fussed with the brim of his bent, shapeless hat, trying in vain to straighten it, only for it to flop back over one eye. A half-empty teacup steamed gently at his elbow. He cleared his throat, peered into the fire for a long moment, and smiled, as though seeing something very far away. "Oh, right. You wanted to hear about Asgorath, didn't you? Or was it about Biscuits?" No, it was Asgorath. Definitely Asgorath. Although Biscuits do have their place in the grand scheme of things, usually next to tea. The dragons said nothing, only watched, some with the patient stillness of ancient mountains, others with the faintest twitch of a tail tip, betraying anticipation. "You see, most people get it all wrong," Fizban went on, tapping the armrest with one knobby finger. "They think creation began with a big bang, or an egg cracking in the void, or gods shouting at each other until stars popped into place like burnt popcorn. All very dramatic, but not quite the truth." He leaned forward, voice dropping conspiratorially. "The truth starts with someone enormous, a single scale bigger than the biggest dragon you've ever seen. His name was Io, though some call him the Ninefold Dragon, the Concordant Dragon, the Great Eternal Wheel, and at least once, the Supreme Keeper of Biscuits. Don't ask." Fizban gave a vague, distracted wave of his hand. Io drifted through the planes and the crystal spheres and the spaces between them and the places between those. He was content, perfectly so. The father of all dragons, even the ones still curled in the hearts of worlds, dreaming mountains and seas into being. He made, well, everything really. Every magical item you've heard of. He's had one. Usually misplaced it. Happens to the best of us. He paused, the firelight dancing in his eyes, turning them for just an instant into something far older, far sharper. Curious thing though, you'd expect a fellow like that to be in every creation story ever told. But most mortals, they haven't heard of him at all, not a peep, because he stepped aside. Let others take the stage. Don't ask me why. No, really, don't. A gold dragon the size of a galley ship shifted slightly, and Fizban straightened, warming to his theme. We dragon sages speak of two voids. The first void, when Io alone was. No stars, no worlds, no time. Just him. And then came the shadow void, born when he shed a drop of blood, willingly mind you, into the nothingness. And oh, the potential it left behind. Worlds, seas, dragons, taverns, tea kettles, all of it. He sat back, hat flopping forward again. Most mortals only know the shadow void. They think that's where it all began. They don't know the first void. They don't know the oldest silence. And honestly, they're better off that way. Fizban tapped his chin, squinting at the fire as though trying to remember whether he'd put more tea leaves in, or less. Now, are the dragon sages right? Ha! Well, if they are, they're poking their snouts into the very inner mystery of the universe itself, which is, not a hobby I recommend. Some secrets are so big they don't quite fit into words, or thoughts, or even polite conversation over supper. Not even this tome. He patted a leather-bound book that wasn't there a moment ago, and which vanished again as he set it down. Could speak of them. Who can say? He took a long, slow sip of tea, then added softly, Some things you simply have to feel, to see, and then never speak of again. The dragons watched him in stillness, as if weighing every word. Now Io, Fizban's voice turned almost reverent, the bumbling warmth thinning to a keen edge of memory. He isn't just neutral, you understand. Oh no, he's beyond it, all alignments and none. You can look for him in any aspect, wise gold, cunning brass, patient bronze, and find a truth suited to the moment. All dragons revere him in the aspect they can understand, though most mortals wouldn't even recognize him if he was sitting in the room. Which, incidentally, his eyes twinkled, isn't the sort of thing you should dwell on too much. He set the cup down and leaned forward. An avatar of Io. Well, that's not something to be trifled with. He only walks the prime when something threatens Dragonkind itself, or when the whole world teeters on the brink. And if he does appear, the tilt he gives the balance might never tilt back. Fizban let that hang in the air, the fire popping in the silence. I'd be unbelievably careful with such a meeting. Not that you'd have much say in the matter. His voice dropped further, almost a whisper now. In a fight, you couldn't run from him. Most couldn't even flee before his presence. Only the greatest armies or the most terrible magic could hope to stand. And even then, he shook his head, letting the thought trail off. Then, as if brushing away something heavy, he brightened. But you see, he's not all about battles and doom. Sometimes, very rarely, he'll send a piece of himself to speak with someone exceptional. He'll draw their astral self up to soar with him among the silver currents of the astral sea. They'll come back thinking it was a dream, but they'll feel it here. Fizban tapped the crown of his head. Or maybe here. He wiggled a finger under a fingernail. Little mark, subtle as you like. A reminder that they were there, with him, if only for a breath. He leaned back with a satisfied nod, fumbling again with his crooked hat. And that, my friends, is about as much as any sane being ought to know. Now, did I ever tell you the one about the bronze dragon and the entirely accidental fireball? Fizban gave his teacup a slow swirl, watching the little eddies as if they were galaxies. Now, if there's one thing to understand about Io, apart from the whole, incomprehensibly vast, ancient, and reality-defining bit, it's that he cares for his children, dragons, all of them. Not this brood or that brood, not just the shiny ones or the toothier ones, not the polite conversationalists over the, somewhat more direct types. All of them. He glanced around at the dragons before him. Sometimes that means taking a dragon's side against the rest of the world. And sometimes it means taking the world's side against a dragon. Yes, I know. Not a popular thought in some circles, but if one great, fiery, self-important lizard is about to doom the rest, well, better to trim one branch than lose the whole tree. He set the cup down, steepling his fingers with an air that was just a shade too practiced for a bumbling old wizard. He doesn't much like meddling in fights between dragons. No, he'd rather we sort out our own quarrels. But if those quarrels start to spill over into something bigger, well, then you might see a claw tip of interference, perhaps through a trusted envoy like Asgorath, or another servant, or, in very rare cases, himself. The firelight flickered over scales and eyes as Fizban leaned back. Now, you won't find shrines to Io on every corner. In fact, you'll be lucky to find one at all. He's not in the habit of collecting clerics. His view is too big for that, too wide for the usual little temple walls. Still, even the most devoted follower of Bahamut or Tiamat or any other dragon god worth their wings, will give him a nod, a word, a little offering when it feels right. A dragon would be a fool not to. He chuckled softly. And every so often, you'll find a kobold, a troglodyte, or some other scaly little kin lighting a candle in his name. Not because he asked, but because they know. Fizban's eyes sharpened briefly, scanning the faces around him. Io doesn't call any faith his enemy. Neutrality has its uses, keeps the lines open, the banners shared. Even dragons of wildly different, shall we say, philosophies, can find common cause under his wings. The moment passed, and his hat slid down over one eye again. He pushed it up, smiling as though nothing of weight had been said at all. And that, my friends, is the long and short of it. Now. Did anyone save me one of those honey cakes? No? Oh, drat. Fizban reached for his tea, found it empty, and sighed as though this were the greatest tragedy of the night. Well now, that's probably more than I ought to have said. It's one thing to tell a story. It's another to walk someone right up to the edge of the oldest truth in the multiverse and give them a nudge. He looked into the fire, eyes softening, the crackling light reflecting in them like drifting constellations. Io, the ninefold dragon, the concordant dragon, the great eternal wheel, moves his majestic form silently through the ether and detritus of the worlds, and he is content. His voice was different now, steadier, resonant, as though something vast and ancient spoke through him. He teaches that creation is not a single act, but a breath that never ends. That to love your kin is to see them as part of the whole, and to protect that whole, even at the cost of yourself. The metallic dragons listened without a sound. Fizban's crooked hat slipped from his head, falling unnoticed to the floor. His shape straightened, grew taller, broader, until the frail old man's frame seemed to dissolve into light, and that light took the form of a great platinum dragon. Wings like molten silver and polished steel unfurled, filling the hall with a glow that was not merely light, but memory and truth. Io's lesson, Bahamut rumbled, his voice rolling like the turning of the heavens, is that all life is a wheel, each spoke dependent on the others. The mighty may guard the weak, the wise may guide the lost, and even the smallest may shape the fate of the vast. Dragons are his children, but so are all things born from the potential he bled into the shadow void. To harm that balance without cause is to deny him. To preserve it is to walk beside him. The great platinum head lowered, eyes meeting each dragon's in turn. That is what Asgorath teaches, that the whole is greater than its parts, and each part, no matter its color, creed, or calling, is sacred in the dance of eternity. Then, in a flash of warmth and shimmer, the great wings folded inward, the light drew back, and there was Fizban again, adjusting his robe, fumbling for his hat. Well, that's quite enough philosophy for one night. Now, who's going to help me find the biscuits?